ASUS's Zephyrus Duo 16 is back, now with dual OLED touchscreens, RTX 5090 laptop graphics, and the best battery life I've ever seen. But dual screens come at a cost, and I'm not just talking about the price. There are some important trade-offs with this design, like less performance. So let's get into all the details. The Duo 16 has a solid CNC aluminum chassis in ASUS's stellar grey finish, and build quality feels great. Everywhere you touch feels nice and sturdy, and flex is minimal even when pushing hard. You can use the Duo in standard laptop mode, or pull out the attached rear kickstand for dual screen mode, which is my favorite because it puts the top screen closer to eye level, so I don't have to bend my neck to look down, like a normal laptop. There's also sharing and tent modes, which feel like a bit of a gimmick to me, and the screen doesn't fold around much more than tent mode, so no chance of using it like a tablet. There's also book mode, which is great if you prefer vertical space, but the way it sits on its stand feels a bit more flimsy. Plus, the right screen is on a different angle. You can get both screens on the same angle if you rest it flat on the desk without the rear stand, but then the balancing act becomes even more risky. The rear metal stand is stuck to the base and feels solid when using it normally, and there's rubber along the bottom of the stand and the front of the laptop to help reduce sliding. There are all sorts of screen shortcuts ASUS walks you through during setup, like tapping the second screen with 6 fingers to bring up a virtual keyboard, a 3-finger tap for a virtual touchpad, the F12 shortcut to swap what's on the screens around, or just drag a window towards the other screen and sort of flick it to send it to the other screen, as well as plenty of options for window positioning while actively dragging a window around. The Duo doesn't seem too thick compared to other laptops based on the spec sheet, but it does stick up a bit at the back due to a thick rubber foot that ASUS don't seem to count towards its thickness measurement. The laptop, with its keyboard included, weighs in at 6.2 pounds or 2.8 kilos, increasing to 7.8 pounds or 3.5 kilos with its 250-watt charger included. This puts it on the heavier side when compared to most other 16-inch gaming laptops, but it's not the worst of the bunch. Despite packing in a second screen, it actually ends up lighter compared to many other powerful 16-inch options once you factor in carrying around the charger, as most other laptops with RTX 5090 graphics simply use more power, and we'll see how much the Duo's smaller 250-watt charger holds it back in our benchmarks. Along with RTX 5090 laptop graphics, my Duo 16 has Intel's newest Panther Lake processor, 64 gigs of RAM, and 2 16-inch OLED touchscreens. But it's also available with an RTX 5070 Ti with the link below. And if it ever has a good sale, we'll list it on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can save money. The link is below. The Duo's keyboard sits above the bottom screen if you're using it in laptop mode. It snaps into place with magnets, and these pins connect the two together, which both charge the keyboard and act as a wired connection. Otherwise, with the keyboard physically disconnected, it's using Bluetooth and running on battery power. This means if you boot into BIOS where there's no Bluetooth, the keyboard will only work while physically connected. The chiclet keyboard only has one zone of RGB lighting, which is kinda pathetic considering how expensive the laptop is. But that's a limit with the current gen Zephyrus G16 and G14 too. Keyboard brightness can be adjusted between 3 levels with the F2 and F3 keys, while the F4 Aura key cycles through 5 basic effects. There's also ASUS's slash lighting on the lid with 35 lighting sections and 15 built-in animations. And this can be controlled through their Armory Crate software, which is the control panel for the laptop. Despite the keyboard being just 5.1mm thick, it feels alright to type on with 1.7mm of key travel, similar to what I remember of other Zephyrus laptops. I'm still not a fan of the tiny arrow keys, but it's infinitely better to type on compared to using the virtual keyboard on the bottom screen. So definitely take the keyboard with you, even though it adds extra weight. The touchpad is massive, super smooth, feels nice to click, and works very nicely, though it is a bit hard to click closer to the top. Port selection isn't too bad with Type A and Type C ports on both sides, though Thunderbolt 4 instead of 5 when you're paying this much money is kinda crazy. And despite being on the thicker side, there's still no room for Ethernet. Both Type C ports connect to the Intel integrated graphics, whether Optimus is on or off. So not great if you were hoping to run VR, but you can get HDMI connecting directly to the NVIDIA graphics if you use the mux switch to reboot. Underneath, you could remove 2 T5 screws and this magnetic cover comes off, giving you fast upgrade access to the 2 M.2 storage slots. Both slots fit SSDs with chips on both sides, but only the slot with the SSD installed supports faster PCIe Gen 5. If you want to try and take the bottom panel off, there are 3 extra screws in there and then 8 more, but I wasn't able to get it apart without it feeling like a risk to the screen. The upgrade score is quite low, as all we really get access to is the 2 M.2 storage slots. RAM is soldered to the motherboard and can never be upgraded, so you'll have to buy it with what you need from the start. Speeds from the installed 2TB PCIe Gen 5 SSD were excellent, and the SD card slot basically maxed out my V90 card. The card doesn't click in and sticks out a bit, so be careful not to bump it. There are speakers underneath towards the front on the left and right sides, and front-facing speakers in between the 2 screens. Overall, they sound great, clear with some bass, similar to other Zephyrus laptops. The Latencymon results weren't amazing in our 5-minute idle test. It plays this sound by default on boot. Fortunately, you can disable it in software or BIOS. The Duo 16 is powered by a 4-cell 90Wh battery. Panel power saver is enabled by default, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60Hz when you unplug the charger to save power, and they both go back up to 120Hz when you plug back in. You can enable battery care mode through the ASUS software to limit the maximum charge level to 80%, which helps improve the longevity of the battery, or you could also enable Eco Mode through Armoury Crate, which disables the NVIDIA graphics and may help improve battery life if you don't need the power-hungry NVIDIA GPU. Battery life was amazing. This is the first 2026 model we've tested with Intel's new Panther Lake, and it's living up to the hype here with the Duo lasting almost 2 hours longer compared to the next best gaming laptop result we've recorded, at least with one screen, which is more fairly comparable to the other results. But even with 2 screens running, it's still beating a lot of other laptops. It lost 18% of its battery charge while asleep for 24 hours. But this isn't a fair comparison with the other laptops, as it depends on the size of the laptop's battery. Here's how much battery life was lost on average per hour, which is a fair comparison. And it's not too bad relative to the other laptops tested, basically matching last year's Zephyrus G16. Let's check out thermals next. I can't comment too much on the cooling design, as I wasn't able to get the Duo open, but ASUS says it's got a vapor chamber cooler with 2 fans, liquid metal on the CPU, and insulated film between the heat generating components and OLED screen. It's got thin air intake vents on both sides, plenty of vents for intake underneath, and air gets exhausted out the back. ASUS's Armoury Crate software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, performance, turbo, and manual. Both turbo and manual modes apply this overclock to the GPU, but only manual mode lets you customize it. Manual mode also lets you customize CPU and GPU power limits, temperature limits, and gives you control over the fan curves. Anytime we've tested manual, everything except overclocks has been maxed out. There are also these new fan options that I haven't seen from ASUS before, which let you control how fast or slow the fan's ramp up and down. So if you start a heavy workload, you could have the fans either kick in faster or slower over time, and then fade out slower or slow down quicker. The internal temperatures are cool at idle, and that doesn't change much even with combined CPU and GPU stress tests running to represent a worst case full load scenario. These internal temps are very cool, and it was possible to lower temps by a few degrees extra by propping the laptop up with its attached stand, as that allows more air to get into the intakes underneath. The CPU maxes out at just 25 watts with the GPU under load at the same time, so that explains the cooler temps. And the 5090 runs at around 137 watts best case in manual mode. The same power limit is why CPU clock speeds don't really change, though I can't explain why silent mode has a higher CPU speed compared to the other modes given they all run at 25 watts. Maybe some combination of lower temps and less power to the GPU allows it. Here's how an actual game performs with the different performance modes in use at the screen's native 2880 by 1800 resolution. I've got Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings running at native in purple, and DLSS upscaling on balanced in red to boost FPS. Even without DLSS, we're able to get 60 FPS in performance mode, and even running on Type-C power with DLSS wasn't too bad. Though Type-C FPS can be greatly improved by turning the resolution down. The CPU can use much more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. We're seeing around 69 watts in all performance modes, which on the one hand is nice, but on the other hand means the different performance modes aren't really doing much other than controlling fan speed. Multi-core performance is close to ASUS Zephyrus G14 and G16 from last year. Given the Duo is far more expensive compared to anything else on this graph, except perhaps MSI's Titan 18, it's not that impressive from a performance per dollar perspective. Don't get me wrong, performance is decent. You can just get more for less if that's a priority for you. Performance doesn't lower too much if we unplug the charger and run on battery power, which is why the Duo moves up compared to the same set of laptops. That's not too surprising considering how good its battery life was. The Duo is clearly power efficient. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, and the Duo was just under this and felt cool overall. It gets a bit warmer on the keyboard with the stress test running, but honestly, it's not bad at all. The cool temps inside result in cool temps with the keyboard attached over the bottom screen, making the Duo one of the best results. Even if we remove the keyboard, the screen still doesn't get too hot, just a bit warm to the touch. I'm thinking this is why ASUS didn't go for higher CPU or GPU power limits, because for a touchscreen laptop like this, you just don't want it to be uncomfortable to the touch. But what about fan noise? Let's have a listen. The fans can get fairly loud in manual mode when intentionally manually maxed out, but turbo mode is pretty decent when compared against most other laptops that we've tested, more towards the lower side if anything. And considering performance in turbo mode isn't far behind manual, it's definitely a better sweet spot for gaming. Alright, let's get into the screens next. Long story short, they both look great. Both OLED touchscreen panels are exactly the same in terms of specs, but as always, there is some slight variance between panels, even if they're the same model. Our top screen, shown here in red, happened to be slightly brighter than the bottom screen shown in blue, but it's an extremely minor difference, and using HDR increases the brightness a little extra. Most OLED laptops we tested last year were around the 400 nit mark when it came to screen brightness, with the exception of Lenovo's laptops, which were closer to 500 nits. So compared to most other OLED laptops last year, the Zephyrus Duo does offer a brightness upgrade, though it's still behind last-gen Legion laptops. ASUS claims it has a peak brightness of 1100 nits in HDR mode, but we're only able to test sustained brightness here. The brightness of both screens adjusts together if you change it through Windows or with the keyboard shortcuts, but if you use the Armoury Crate software, you can use the flicker-free dimming setting to change the brightness of either panel independently. There are also some options here to help reduce the risk of of OLED burn-in. OLED laptop screens are glossy, but the anti-reflective coating on the Duo does a much better job compared to Razer's Blade 16 from last year, which looks more like a mirror. Screen response time is super fast, with content on screen changing in about half a millisecond. That's just a benefit of OLED panels, so the Duo ends up quite similar compared to other laptops with OLED screens we've tested. Total system latency was fine. This is the time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire shows up on screen in Counter-Strike 2. There are plenty of cheaper laptops that are faster, as they simply have higher power limits and produce more FPS. But that 5 millisecond difference between the Duo and the best result isn't much in practice. The Duo does not have advanced Optimus, so if you want to get optimal performance in games, you'll need to use the Mux switch to disable the integrated graphics. But honestly, outside of esports games, it's probably not worth the hassle of rebooting. Adaptive Sync is available with Optimus on from the iGPU on both screens, and G-Sync is available with Optimus off from the DGPU, but only for the top screen. The bottom screen doesn't get G-Sync, so you'll want to play games on the top panel for the best experience. There's a 1080p camera above the screen in the middle. It has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock, and this is how it sounds while typing on the keyboard. Alright, let's see what the Duo 16 can do in games. We've tested it with these settings. Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p Ultra settings ran great as a standalone result, but it's one of the lowest 5090 results we've tested. Granted, not as bad compared to last year's Blade 16. The gap between the Duo and Blade closes at 1440p, and both are still a fair bit behind other laptops with the same GPU that are allowed to feed their GPU more power. And that's why at 4K, ASUS's SCAR 16 from last year with the same GPU was reaching a 17% higher average frame rate than the more expensive Duo. Alan Wake 2 was one of the lower 5090s at 1080p too, but you're not buying a 5090 to game at 1080p. 1440p was still above 60 FPS at max settings without upscaling. Not bad, but if your goal is on better gaming performance, you can definitely spend less money on pretty much any other 5090 laptop for a better experience. Even at 4K, the Duo gets beaten by HP's Omen Max 16 with 5080, and you could buy 3 of those for the price of the Duo with the right sale. Black Myth Wukong is more of what we've already seen at all 3 resolutions, with the Duo not performing too differently compared to far cheaper, lower spec 5080 options. And I'm starting to suspect that's why ASUS aren't offering this with a 5080, and performance was still pretty decent with a combination of DLSS upscaling and ray tracing. We only test ray tracing with settings that actually visually enhance the game, so these could be worth using if you want some extra eye candy. Or of course, you can forget about RT and still use DLSS by itself to boost FPS even higher. Here are the 3D Mark results. Performance in content creator workloads isn't super impressive, especially in Photoshop, but the Duo is still plenty capable, and its dual OLED screen setup with SD card slot makes it a killer option for content creators. The BIOS is pretty much the same as other ASUS gaming laptops. It looks modern, but there's not a whole lot of customization available through here compared to other brands like MSI or Lenovo. I wasn't able to test Linux support, as booting from Ubuntu 26.04 completely freezes. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and current sales. If the Duo has a good sale, you'll find it on our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that daily to include the best sales, so make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording in late May, the RTX 5070 Ti configuration starts from $4,500 US without a sale, which is crazy stuff considering other great gaming laptops with this GPU have gone on sale for more than $2,500 less. Meanwhile, the 5090 version with half the RAM and half the SSD space that I've tested in this video goes for $5,500. So you're absolutely paying a massive premium for the unique dual screen design, given other great 5090 laptops like a Legion Pro 7 go for $2,500 less. So the Duo is super expensive, surprising no one. But is it worth spending more money for? Let's summarize the good and the bad to find out. Starting with the good, you've got those dual OLED touchscreens, amazing battery life, excellent build quality, and great great thermals. But then on the other hand, the Duo is on the heavier side as far as 16-inch laptops go. It's got soldered RAM, so less upgradability. Performance isn't as good compared to other laptops with similar specs. It's missing Thunderbolt 5 if you care about that, and of course, it's insanely expensive. Bottom line, the Duo 16 is obviously a niche laptop. It's a multitasker's dream, and I really enjoyed being able to look at the top screen, which is about at eye level, rather than having to have my head tilt down while using the bottom screen, which is what you have to do with a normal laptop. But you can of course get that same benefit with a much cheaper laptop just by putting it on a stand or a cooling pad. What you can't get elsewhere is that second screen, which just lets you view more content compared to carrying around an external screen. Having it all in one package is much more convenient. If you're made of money and don't mind sacrificing optimal performance for the second screen, then the Duo 16 would be a great option for gamers, streamers, and content creators. Actually, it's the only option if you're after the two screens, because this thing has no competition at the moment. On the other hand, if you'd prefer more performance for less money, Lenovo's new Legion Pro 7i just turned up, so get subscribed for that one.